looking forward to this matchup as far as, the game within the game of watching Campbell, Emory Jones, who's the SEC Offensive Lineman of the Week after his performance last week versus Arkansas. Will Campbell and that crew packing up and going to face Shamar Stewart and the defensive line at Texas A&M that is performing at a very high level. They've got some transfers on that unit. They've got some guys that obviously they've recruited, like Stewart, who's playing at an extremely high level. And the matchup between LSU's offensive line versus Texas A&M's defensive line is, the one within the matchup, within the game, that is where all the eyeballs, where all the next level guys, where the scouts, the GMs, all the decision makers that are going to be on hand for this one, that's what they're coming to see. I mean, you got some real high talent, high round draft pick in this game when you're talking about the trenches. And it's not just Campbell, it's not just Emory Jones, and it's not just Shamar Stewart on that side for A&M. I mean, they've got some individual matchups up front that is going to be worth the price of admission. So it's definitely a this is a heavyweight fight coming up on Saturday night. I mean, this is a huge matchup for both sides. And not only the magnitude of the game, the physicality in which it's going to be decided by. I mean, one thing that Blake Baker has restored in his first year is playing with a purpose, flying around out there and playing physical. There was one thing that you could guarantee when you bought your ticket to watch LSU play, and that they were going to be cracking some heads. I mean, they were looking to hurt people on defense. And, I mean, for as much as Sage Ryan has taken over the last couple of years, I thought that hit the other night was almost kind of a breakthrough moment for the entire group of kind of saying, this is how we are, because over the last couple of weeks, they've been playing more. They've been playing faster. They've been playing more aggressive. They've been playing more physical. And this one on Saturday night is going to be 4 quarters of it, I believe. I think Texas A&M is a physical team. They are built up front on both lines of scrimmage. I mean, the Zorn kid up front with Basantis, I mean, they are physical. Along with LSU, I think this is going to be, I think this is a heavyweight fight. I think it's the biggest matchup in the country on Saturday. I really do. I think this is as intriguing of a game that Saturday presents, especially when you talk about what's on the line in the league at this point. I mean, to have two undefeated SEC teams squaring off at the midway mark, really a little past the midway mark. It's going to be awesome. I mean, this could. LSU going into the bye week, if they're able to pull this off and have wins over Arkansas, wins over A&M, and going to, kind of get healthy for the last month with Bama coming in, that is a beautiful spot to be sitting in. I mean, that is such a great spot. I mean, I for one did not have that on the card. I mean, this team deserves a lot of credit, and the coaching staff deserves a ton of credit for getting them where they are going into this Saturday. I mean, I know LSU feels disrespected when you look at the polls, but if you listen to people talk about college football, there's some underlying respect there that people are starting to take notice to, and it really all the conversation is starting on the defensive side of the ball, which I think is, really, I mean, that is a very good sign for LSU. Like Kelly was talking about yesterday, I mean, you got some scenarios where you got a lot of true freshmen contributing out there right now. That could be a scary scenario, You lose your fear if you go on the road and win with those guys. I mean, that's how you grow up. That's how you gain some experience. That's how you really, put confidence into a player of being able to get him out there. I mean, whether it was Devon Keys, who was out there making plays on Saturday night, the continued development of Ahmad Bro out there, PJ Woodland continuing to play, Xavier Atkins was out there a little bit at linebacker. I mean, they are really starting to cut the teeth on some freshmen in some high-pressure moments on the road, in the league, in an environment where, you've really got to be able to make plays and get stops. Those guys being on the field, that is worth its weight in gold as far as the experience goes with being able to get that type of stuff done in those types of atmospheres. Road wins in the league, being able to play freshmen like that and have them making plays. I mean, I thought Devon Keys was going to pick that second pass off.
You almost caused two.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, like, he had the one. I thought he was going to make that interception. I mean, he's playing with a lot of confidence to him. And, I know that doesn't stack up well as far as a true freshman being able to be out there all the time. But, man, that is invaluable as far as the experience goes and what that does for the confidence into the future of these guys. And, what Blake Baker has done, I know we talked a lot about it yesterday and, would echo the same sentiments here this morning of you really cannot calculate and, weigh just how much of an improvement this group has made in a very short time. And I think it goes really more of the trust factor of these guys just believing what Baker is saying and trusting that and going out there and playing, carefree. And when I say carefree, just not thinking, knowing where they're supposed to be, trusting the scheme, and being football players. Major Burns was a really good football player at Madison Prep. I mean, it wasn't by accident that he was getting offers from SEC schools. And for the first time in watching Burns play at this level, he looks similar to that player that was at Madison Prep, where he was just kind of all over the field. They would play him in different roles. And I know he's not versatile here, but he's just playing with a carefree mentality that he trusts where he's supposed to be, and he's just kind of he's just being himself. I mean, he's using the skills that he has to make the play, and I think that's always been there. I mean, Mekhi Wingo put out a tweet yesterday. I mean, obviously there was something going on. I mean, look, that's not breaking news, but I mean, it has been unlocked. It has been found, and they are now in the right direction, pointing in the right direction where they believe the guy that is leading them. And doing this without Jacoby and Guillory, without Harold Perkins, without guys that you knew you were going to have access to, and getting the most out of. I mean, Whit Weeks leads the league in tackles right now. Forget leading the team. I mean, he leads the conference in tackles right now. I mean, what you're getting up front from Savion Jones, who is the same type of player role that I would speak on with Major Burns. I mean, for the first time since he's been at LSU, he looks like he's playing with a spirit of, I trust what I'm doing. I know I'm in the right spot. The coach has got me playing at a high level because I believe what he's telling me. I mean, all these guys were here. I mean, it wasn't like they just woke up when Blake Baker showed up and said, oh, yeah, I'm a football player. Let me just go back to playing it. I mean, they were trying to do what they've been doing all their life, last season. There was an obvious disconnect. And, Kelly's sound bites yesterday on Blake Baker. I mean, you can see that he really he knows he got the right guy. He knows that when he shows up, those guys they're going to follow what Baker tells them.
I don't think it's any more evident than you can go back and watch the Jacques Doucet video of Mekhi Wingo and Matt House, and then you can go and watch Major Burns on the field with Blake Baker and his kids.
Right.
Like, that's somebody that's been invested in the culture and building up his players. When you're talking about Blake Baker, if you're comfortable enough to be on the field and talk to his family versus Mekhi Wingo and Matt House looking excited for the first time maybe all year, trying to inspire some sort of relationship, and Mekhi Wingo's like, no, dog, I'm good. I'm out. Yeah.
It's been over.
Too little, too late. Yeah, right. And I think it speaks more to the scheme that Matt House must have been trying to run, where it was very much complicated, what you want to do, where you need to be, checks and everything, because you saw people playing defense out of position, not knowing where to go, not knowing what to do, very much on your heels, and this defense is so aggressive, trust exactly what they're supposed to do, and it just feels a little bit more simplified to where you're not trying to check at the line of scrimmage up until the final gun.
I mean, the Jaden Daniels offensive team will always kind of keep Tiger fans up or be the argument.
Well, yeah, this defense doesn't help.
But give Blake Baker, Mason Smith, Mekhi Wingo, Jordan Jefferson, and Omar Spates, who is...
That's criminal.
I mean, like, starting for the Los Angeles Rams. Think about that. If Baker's on staff last year and you got those cats, and you still have Braden Swinson, and you still have Whit Weeks. I mean, I know this show was screaming into the microphone last year of how is Whit Weeks sitting on the bench? Like, that is inexplicable as a football coach. And now, a year later, he's leading the league in tackles. Just because he got the opportunity to play. I mean, man, that the 2023 LSU football team might be the biggest what if of all time when you talk about that offense. Jaden Daniels, Brian Thomas, Malik Neighbors, Mason Taylor, and guys on defense that are going to make money. Braden Swinson's a pro. I mean,
he didn't play last year.
He didn't even get on the field last year. It is. Ugh. Ugh. But a year later, Blake Baker comes in, has totally flipped the culture on its head. Everybody's bought in, believing, and now you've got a group and a unit that people, look, you can't overlook them at all anymore. I'm not saying that they're going to win games for you, but I mean, to hold Ole Miss to 26, to do what they did to Petrino's offense, back-to-back weeks. Now you're going to face a Connor Wegman-led offense that, look, I have respect for Klein and that offensive play caller, but Wegman struggled last week.
Struggled.
I mean, like, when I'm telling you the 2 interceptions were terrible and he should have thrown 4, I mean, I know Blake Baker sees that you got a guy who's kind of, wobbly on the ropes. A&M does present a challenge in the sense of they do have a guy in Marcel Reed that's a lot different than Wegman. And, if Wegman does struggle to a point where Reed comes into the game, you're talking about like kind of a Rohan Matt Malk situation where you've compared, you've prepared for one thing and next thing you know, you're getting hit with something you weren't expecting. So, A&M's a tough team to get ready for, man. I mean, really, A&M is a really good team when you kind of look at what they've done. They're so much like LSU. The kind of the present day status of this year's team, LSU and A&M side by side, are mirror images of one another. I mean, the obvious stuff of, the opening up against marquee matchups, having opportunities to win those games, not closing them out, but really improving week over week over week and developing key roles on the team where, I mean, you've got some dudes, man. I mean, A&M's got some dude. Obviously, LSU is rolling and has some dudes and really believing that, they should be in the place where they are. A&M's believing the same thing coming in here with Elko. Elko's done a really good job in year one, man. I mean,
would it change that culture that quickly?
Yeah.
Because I feel like Jimbo had kind of worn himself out of town with A&M, and then you bring in, 11 transfers to A&M, and that's a hard thing to do. You've seen it at multiple stops where you try to go out through the transfer. Look at Florida State. You try to build your team through the portal, but Elko obviously had relationships with the guys that he brought in, and he's able to establish culture very quickly, which is something they love at A&M. And it's turned out to be a very positive choice because when we saw the Elko hire, we were wondering what direction A&M was going to go. If they were going to take another big swing and try to flex.
They tried to mess it up with Stoops.
Right.
They tried to screw it up.
And you see what Stoops is doing. He's got his one marquee win on the year at Kentucky and then kind of goes back to
ride the roller coaster.
Yes.
Ride the roller coaster.
And so you were wondering what they were going to do, and I don't think the Mike Elko hire was, fly a banner, but it might have been the right place, right time, right guy to okay, let's get back to our roots here a little bit and get it. He's an A&M guy, correct?
Elko?
Yeah.
No, he's actually an Ivy League guy. But he was at A&M under Jimbo for a year before he got the head coaching job at Duke. But A&M and Jimbo hired him from Brian Kelly.
I was about to say, it goes Brian Kelly.
And if you remember, Kelly kind of he took that real personal. That was, he thought Notre Dame's job at that point was bigger than the defensive coordinator job at Texas A&M. And, this was SEC money. This was an opportunity to be seen for Elko to run an SEC defense, and it didn't take him long to turn that into a head coaching job. But, that's where Elko originally came from. But, in the same sense that we talk about the teams kind of being mirror images of one another, I think you hear both the respect that both sides have. I watched both Brian Kelly and Mike Elko's press conference, and they were both asked about one another. Kelly obviously hired Elko at Notre Dame to be the defensive coordinator. Elko worked for Kelly there, but they both have similar paths to where they are now. Both started as Division II coaches, worked their way up to, the top of the trade. They are sitting in two very revered seats. Spots that is very competitive. And you can hear the respect that they have for one another and the paths that they've taken to get to where they are. So, along with the teams being side by side, very similar, the coaches, outside of sharing the relationship of working together, their resume look a lot the same. Kelly's been doing it for longer because of just the age difference, but in the way that they've gotten to head coaching seats in SEC schools, side by side, the resume of Brian Kelly and Mike Elko, look a lot alike.
This has to feel like deja vu for Brian Kelly with the Blake Baker hire this year and the Mike Elko hire in 2017 after he had Brian Van Gorder running the defense in 2016, and you saw how that played out. It was on Showtime, where he gets fired pretty much midway through the year, but he was with Brian Kelly for 3 years. Matt House was trending on being with Brian Kelly for 3 years. Makes a quick change. They went from 61st in scoring defense to 33rd at Notre Dame in 1 year under Mike Elko. LSU goes from triple digits in scoring defense to 33rd in scoring defense. So Brian Kelly, what changes all stays the same in some instances, but he corrected it. And it's just funny to see how you try the same plan over and over and it works until it doesn't. And now you have a fresh slate, and it's just funny how all these parallels are drawn together, A&M and LSU, with, you could say, Elko to Blake Baker.
Yeah, no, I think you're looking at a lot of brain power in the sport is going to be on display Saturday. Both of these sides are going to be more strategic than we'll see in other matchups. This will be a really good match between Colin Klein, the offensive coordinator for Texas A&M, who came over from Kansas State, who does some really good things. I mean, he does some really creative things with the quarterback, no matter if it's Wegman or Reed, that puts them in really good places to make plays. I mean, they have good opportunities to make some plays. And yeah, I think Klein does a good job of calling plays. So Klein versus Baker, and then you got Elko, who, you know, is very well respected on the defensive side of the ball, scheming up an offense, and Garrett Nussmeier, who's already thrown for over 2,200 yards, just shy of 20 touchdowns. And you've got a running back in Caden Durham that the respect he's getting from not only in-house. I thought Brian Kelly's soundbite on Durham yesterday was you know, that was cool to see. You know, I mean, that had to go a long way for a true freshman to hear a head coach speaking about you like that publicly. I mean, it takes a lot for a true freshman to get compliments in public. I mean, I'm sure that they do a really good job of, you know, staying positive around those guys internally. But, you know, I mean, you want to be able to measure how these guys are going to handle it before you start putting some expectation on them in the public of talking about them in press conferences. And I thought what Kelly said about Caden Durham yesterday was the ultimate sign of respect from the head coaching spot to a true freshman who has really, I mean, look, you know, Chris Hilton came in with the reputation of a track guy to LSU. I mean, because of all of his accomplishments in high school, you know, for as good of a football player as he was at Zachary, and he was standout on the football field, he came in with this reputation of a track guy. And to be quite honest, after 4 years on campus, he's not really overcome that. I thought the same thing about Caden Durham. I mean, I saw his high school highlights. I respected what he was doing, but then I heard him talk about track and saw him run track, and it was like, man, this guy's he's a track athlete. Not the case. I mean, in 4 games, he has discredited that feeling of him being, you know, kind of I don't want to call it fragile, but, you know, I mean, track athletes, to me, the way that I label a track athlete is they got to be pristine. They got to be sharp. They got to be almost perfect to go out there and run, perform, right? Like if you carry that mentality over to a football field, you're not going to play very long. You know, nobody's really fully healthy after they play a game for the rest of the season. And Caden Durham, I would argue, I mean, I came in here the Monday morning after the South Alabama game, and my first concern was Caden Durham looks a lot more hurt than a toe injury. I mean, Miles Frazier just dead weight fell on him while he was standing still. It looked terrible. The fact that he went back in the game that night was a positive sign, but there had to be some fallout from that. I mean, that was look, I respect the injuries and all of what they do from a public standpoint. That seemed a lot more than a toe injury. I mean, like, just, you know, trying to call a spade a spade. I mean, that looked gruesome. I thought for a second there that he was done.
Well, his instant reaction didn't help. Like
sure,
when you see him,
like,
but you see him get fall, like, you know, the way he was.
Offensive lineman dead weight on you, and you don't feel it, you don't see it, you're not ready for it, you're not prepared. I mean, that was the fact that he's still playing. I'm telling you, that's a break. You know, like, I mean, like you caught one there. I mean, I thought for a minute that was going to be tragic, and then the way that he has not only kept himself available, you know, and just available to play, but making plays. I mean, like, the toughness, the vision, the hard run, the cutting ability, the speed, he's shown it all to me. I mean, Caden Durham, if there's a better freshman running back in the country, where is he? Where is he? I mean, he has proven to, I know at least me over his 4-game stretch, this cat is a football player, man. He is I think Brian Kelly said he's maybe working at 85%. I believe that. You know, I mean, like that is tough for a true freshman to withstand the beating that an SEC schedule can provide, and him going through really, he didn't come into the South Carolina game and just kind of got inserted to the teeth of the line, the teeth of the schedule, and has been arguably the top 3 player on LSU's offense since then. I mean, outside of Nussmeier, Taylor, Lacey, and, Campbell and the crew up front, I mean, from a skill standpoint, Caden Durham is as tough, reliable, and as good as you have on this offense. He has been incredible.